has turned to October. Feels like fall outside. I wore my sweater to work today. It was only 87 degrees.
I'm sorry.
Pumpkin spice lattes, fall leaves are falling outside. God, Florida in the fall is just the best, isn't it?
I love this time of year. Like, I don't know whether to apologize to you for having to wear a sweatshirt. I love this time of year.
That was a joke. I didn't wear a sweater. It's 1,000 degrees outside. I love this time of year too, but it's not fall yet. It's 1,000,000 degrees. Anyway, the calendar is flipped. That's my point. I'm Zach Dean. This is Chris Boyle. High school football week number 7. That means we have 5 weeks left beginning this Friday night. This is a huge week. Last week was Gut Check Friday. What do you want to dub this one? Road Trip Friday?
This is Road Trip Friday for sure.
Road Trip Friday. Mainland and Cocoa. That's going to be our premier game this week. This is, do we call this a rivalry? I guess we could, right?
Yeah, it's 3rd year in a row they've played. Cocoa's gotten the better end of Mainland each of the last 2 seasons. But yeah, I think between the distance and, as far as East Central Florida, I would say this is definitely a game that people kind of circle on their calendars and want to see these teams play pretty regularly. So it's good to have them on the calendar again. And Cocoa Mainland is certainly a game that people are going to be interested on Friday night for sure.
And you're headed down there. You're going to make the trip with the Bucks. God, you were just
we could call this mileage check Friday. That'd be another way to.
This could be last time we ever go anywhere Friday because our expense reports are going to be out off the charts this time next month. Anyway, you are the Mainland Bucks beat writer this year because they seem to be playing big game after big game. They obviously rebounded last week against Daytona. 2 weeks ago, they had the heartbreaker against Seminole.
Right.
They lost at DeLand earlier this year. I still feel like we're waiting for that signature Mainland win this year, and they're going to get another shot at it Friday.
I think that's definitely fair to say. I mean, they've handled their business in district play for sure.
Right.
They blew out both Pine Ridge and Daytona, and they've been very, very close against DeLand and against Seminole. They lost that game on the last possession, so they were within striking distance against both of those teams. Cocoa comes into this game a top 5 team in 4A yet again. They beat them last year 44-27. What you saw with Cocoa last year, they came out, really threw the ball well, efficiently early. I remember a lot of screen passes, a lot of short, high percentage throws. Diego Arroyo had 3 touchdown passes in the first half, and then they wore them down at the end and finally allowed Keziah Holmes to get off and get 100 yards rushing late in that game. Holmes is a Penn State commit. He's rushed for 783 yards, 8.5 yards per attempt with 10 touchdowns this season. He'll certainly be the focal point, but you can't keep your eye off of Arroyo. I mean, he's completed passes to 8 different receivers this year. 5 different players have caught a touchdown. 4 of at least 10 receptions, so they are willing to spread it around, get everybody involved, keep defenses off their toes so you can't just focus in on one guy. Defensively, the standout player so far this year, DeJavon White has 6 sacks, and A.J. Williams with 66 tackles, including 28 solo.
I didn't listen to a thing you just said, but I did realize that my button is ridiculous right now. Why didn't you tell? Am I going to Miami this week? I mean, am I going to Key West with Spruce Creek?
Wouldn't you love that?
I think I could fit the bill down there. Gold chain, my button is ridiculous. I apologize for that. I guess we got to slap an NC-17 on this recording. Anyway, Mainland and Cocoa is going to be a good one. I think Mainland. The big thing with them is they seem to get off to these ridiculously slow starts this year. They did it against Seminole. They did it against DeLand. You can't go to Cocoa against a good team like that. They cannot get off to these 14-0 holes like they have all year.
Right, and I think they've got to figure out where they want to be. The identity perspective, I guess. I mean, they've really had success early throwing in district games, throwing it early, and they were able to run the ball. Maybe that they can build off of that performance because 3 different running backs scored last week between Gregory Mango, Nathaniel Braswell, and Isaiah Gordon. All 3 players scored a touchdown, so maybe they build off of that performance. And certainly, if you're Cocoa, you want to worry about T.J. Lockley. Seminole certainly had him as the number 1 target, and they held him without a catch. Yeah. We'll see if Lockley can get past the Cocoa secondary and beat them deep like he has a few times this year. Not
too far down the road from those two will be DeLand and Vieira. DeLand coming off a nice win over Spruce Creek, which I think we all agreed upon that they were the better team in that game, and they proved us right. It was close at the beginning, though. Marvin Scott, as we thought he would.
The great equalizer.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, he kept him in that game. And actually, Creek held a lead there late in the first half, and then the wheels kind of came off there towards the end. So DeLand gets a huge district win. They are alive and well. It's a district showdown with Vieira. Vieira, who's been, at least in the past, a pretty tough team for anybody in this state. Don't know how good they are this year. I'm sure you do because you got it all written down right there.
Yeah, they are very solid. I mean, they're 2-2. Their only 2 losses this year, Cocoa and Rockledge. I mean, those are 2 very top-end teams.
Respectable losses.
They blew out Harmony in their last game, so this is going to be a very good Vieira team that they're playing. This is a game that, in terms of the postseason picture, if DeLand can get this win, considering that opponent's record, opponent's record, that sort of thing, this is a game that's going to end up being a lot of points for them, I think. With Vieira, in recent years, last year in particular, they were a team that really thrived throwing the football. This year, it seems to kind of be the other way around. They've had more success running it with TJ Johnson, 5 touchdowns, 113 yards per game. They've split the reps between quarterbacks. Bryce Norton's been the primary thrower, but they've also used CJ Sims here and there. Defensively is where Vieira is really, really tough. They give up only 13.5 points a game. They have Zach Sidaros with 4 interceptions. As a unit, they've got 65 tackles for loss and 28 sacks. So this is going to be a real test for DeLand's offensive line to give Jaden Nerschel the time, because as we've seen, they want to throw the ball. They want to be able.
Do they ever?
But they want to be able to establish a passing game to get the ball in the hands of Cameron Miller and Chuck Bradley, among others. So this is going to be a real test for their offensive line to give Nerschel that pocket to be able to scan the field and make accurate throws.
That offensive line did not do well against Seminole. I think that was Steve Allen said after the game. Nerschel just didn't have time to throw the ball, and that was their real downfall in the second half there. So you're right, that offensive line, that trench play, it's going to be key in this one. That's one. Actually, that's 2. Our third biggest game of the week, we're going to go from down south in Cocoa and Vieira up north to St. Augie, as Ken Willis calls it.
Yeah.
St. Augustine, great place, great town, good football team. Don't know if they're better than FPC, though. That's where Flagler finds themselves Friday night.
And these teams played last year, and it was really the worst start that St. Augustine had in basically a century of football. Flagler took full advantage of it, ran away with that game early. And I was impressed with Flagler's ability to throw the ball. Preston Roberts, in just his second career start last week, 17 of 26, 284 yards, 4 touchdowns.
Did you start him on your fantasy team?
The stats were as good as the performance was. He threw a very pretty fade ball on the second touchdown pass.
Yeah.
Spread it out, gave it to a number of different players. Flagler's got a bunch of receivers that can hurt you, with Jonathan Richard, with Tyreek Graham, with Tyshawn Blunt. They've got 3 guys that can really get open and make things interesting and make things tough on a secondary. St. Augustine's best player is in the secondary. Their safety, Jaden McDowell, a senior at 5'11", 170 pounds. For St. Augustine, offensively, it's going to be about taking care of the ball. Last week was the first time they had a game in which they didn't turn it over. They beat Inglewood 56-7 as a result. And Justice Johnson is their centerpiece. Running back scored a touchdown in all 5 games this season.
Road trip Friday. We do have some local teams around here. I believe Daytona Atlantic's one. Father Lopez and Lake something.
That's where you'll be.
Lake Weir. How do you pronounce it?
Lake Weir from Ocala.
That's from Ocala, huh?
That's a game where Lopez has to see if they can get right.
You gotta win this game if you're Lopez. You cannot lose this game.
What's interesting is both of these teams won 8 games last year, and they were both playoff teams. And right now, both of them are really in a big hole.
Yeah.
Lopez went across to Polk County last week and lost 50-13 to Jordan Christian Prep, a game that we totally got wrong, and they let us know about it.
Holy cow.
So I think for Lopez, I mean, you got to get back to the things that have been kind of your hallmarks. I mean, you've got to get the ball in Eddie Whipple's hands. You've got to be able to protect the football. When they've turned it over this year, they've really been punished for it. And, I think you've still got really good talent on that team. I think Ryan Waddell's still among the area's top tacklers. There's enough depth, and Isaiah Shirley had in a bad game last week, had 7 catches for 130 yards, so he was a bright spot for that team. Lake Weir's going to test their secondary. They throw it a lot. I think they've got a quarterback around 800 yards passing, a couple of receivers that have combined for about 40 catches. So they're going to test that secondary. And so far, they've had games where they've been able to take the ball away. I remember Adam Utter had a pick 6 for Lopez earlier this year. So that's certainly a game to keep an eye on. And a few other teams on the road as well. Spruce Creek, you kind of touched on it. They're going down to Key West.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great
fishing
spot
down there.
Great spot to be. That's going to be a game that might end very quickly. Another team that loves to run the ball, Key West. They've run it a ton. I think they're about a 4-to-1 run to pass ratio. And then you've got University trying to get back on track when they go to Lyman, a team that beat them last year.
Wow. It's a big week. It's a big week. I think we've talked about our picks. This could be Separation Friday for our picks. I've regained a 3-game lead because Trinity Christian lost in double overtime. I was the one who had whoever they were playing. I don't freaking know. This is a big week. I think this is going to be a week. I have not made mine yet because we're recording this on Wednesday. But I think there's going to be some different picks here.
See, here's the thing. I think this is maybe the most exciting week that we've had thus far because a lot of the games I wouldn't put as maybe more than a touchdown favorite. Like I think you look at even a Matanzas. They go to Lake Howell. Lake Howell on paper 3-2. Matanzas has gone on the road and pulled an upset already this year. They went to Middleburg and came from behind, a game they probably were the underdog in. So I wouldn't rule them out. University and Lyman were close last year. Lyman kind of pulled away from them last year, but I think on paper they're close. Lyman's lost their last 2 games by a combined 6 points. And another team I think worth keeping an eye on this Friday too is Seabreeze. They're going for their 4th win of the year. They're going for 3 in a row. They play Halifax. They won 2 games last week, the Knights. They got back on track. So both these teams have 3 wins. Another opportunity for Halifax to go up against a bigger school to try to maybe legitimize themselves as a program that's going to have some staying power around here.
And Seabreeze with the New Smyrna showdown looming in a few weeks.
Right after that, yep.
How about my beard? Dolphins lost again. I did get it touched up. I got it groomed. So I'm
disappointed in you then.
I know it looks good though, and it still looks long. Whatever.
Have you already gotten your Tagovailoa jersey yet?
I don't know what number he's going to be because 13's retired. That's the big topic in Miami. Anyway, I know this video's gone too long. I've talked about my chest hair and my beard. I think we've got all the topics covered. You're going to be at the Mainland Cocoa game. I'm going to stay in town because we can only have one person leave the area. Follow Lopez and Lake Weir. I'm coming at you on Friday. Zach Dean, Chris Boyle. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us everywhere. We're going to give you all the good news on Friday. We will see you then.